Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode number 125, with today's guest, Navid Moazzez.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
My name's Adam Franklin, and you are listening to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. This is the show for people who love marketing on the web. I'm going to take you behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments where we look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. We confess what's failed and reveal the truth about what really works. This show is brought to you by the book that Toby and I wrote. It's called Web Marketing That Works, and there's a gift for you, and that is the bundle of marketing templates. There's 33 of those, and you can download them at bluewiremedia.com.au. So today's guest is a guy called Navid Moazzez, and he is known for running virtual summits. So what's a virtual summit, I hear you ask? Well, it's like a conference, but it's done all online. So you get a whole bunch of interesting speakers together, have them at specific slots throughout the day, or it could be a multi-day summit, and basically you beam them in via a live webinar or a blab, or it could purely be audio if you wanted to. And people register to attend. They simply fill out their registration form and put their name and email address in, and then typically they get access to watch the sessions live, and there may be certain offers that the conference or the summit organizer makes. Things like getting a lifetime access to the recordings, things like bonus workbooks or bonus sessions. But for the most part, the online summit is a free event, and then you've got the option of investing further if you want to. So Navid has done a fantastic job of this. He's known across the web for this particular specialty. He's had online summits with as many as 88 speakers. He's done it where they've built an email list of 30,000 or helped somebody build an email list of 30,000 subscribers and 6 figures in revenue from an online summit. So here's the man when it comes to these things, and he's been featured all across the web in interesting places like the Huffington Post and Inc., and across blogs like Zero to Launch and Entrepreneur's Journey, Fizzle, Firepole Marketing, a lot of the big name blogs on the internet. So with that introduction, let's head over to the chat I have with Navid Moazzez. My name's Adam Franklin, and I am joined on the line by Navid Moazzez. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm well. I'm very well, thank you. Now, I'm very intrigued to be interviewing you today because you are known for doing virtual summits. And a lot of our listeners may not be familiar with what that is just yet. So, Navid, would you mind explaining to me and our listeners what exactly a virtual summit is?
Yeah, to be honest, it's very similar to an interview-based podcast or even webinars, but you have multiple interviews during a summit. And what I like to do is I have video interviews because the perceived value is higher, right? You might have heard of telesummits before, and they were typically audio-based, but the audio was really not that great. And we are moving in now. Now we are in 2016. At the time of this recording, we got to do video interviews. And I have a number of experts on a summit. It's like 20 to, for my first one, I had 88, but you don't need to have anywhere near that. So from 20 to 50 experts. And it really helps if you structure this kind of virtual summit or online conference as a course where you have different sections or kind of a structure to it. So for one summit I was helping out with Chandler Bolt on the Self-Publishing Success Summit, we had 3 phases. So we had the first writing phase, then we had the marketing and publishing phase, and monetizing. So it was much easier to kind of fit the speakers in there. And also, it's not just a bunch of interviews. Like if you go on iTunes and, stumble across a podcast, it might be a lot of interviews, but they, have not really a structure to it. But that's what you can do with the summit. And also, you have people sign up for free, you grow your email list rapidly, and then on the back end, kind of when they sign up on thank you page and also in the email communication, you can sell an all access pass, which consists of the recordings of the interviews and some exclusive bonuses. So it's kind of an irresistible offer. And that's been working really well for us. And there's some other monetization models as well you can implement with a virtual summit. But the essence is that you have it for free, grow your email list rapidly, and then you monetize in the back end.
Okay, so it's a bit like just turning up to the offline equivalent would be going to a real life conference, seeing a bunch of speakers, essentially for free. But then if you want to re-watch any of the sessions on video, then you can actually pay for a pass to have lifetime access, say, to a whole bunch of videos and whatever bonuses the speakers might throw in as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the beauty of a virtual summit is that it's very low cost compared to like an offline conference to organize. I mean, of course, like people always come to me like, okay, it's going to cost me a few $100s, but think about what it would cost to bring that many people into a room and have speakers there. Maybe you have to pay for their travel, for their fees, but I don't actually pay typically for any of the speakers. I haven't done that up until this point. People participate for free, and obviously you got to make it a win-win for them to do so, but usually it had no problems. Even if you're starting from scratch, you can get really high-level speakers on board for your summit, and they will be happy to participate, and in some cases even share that with their email list and on social media, so you can grow your list as well, and then you can help them out afterwards even more to share maybe something they offer.
Yes, that's really interesting. So you get your speakers essentially for free. It costs you very little to put on. You said a few $100s. That's awfully appealing because I know I've run my fair share of events over the years, and I'll tell you what, you're exactly right. They are expensive and time consuming, and you're lucky to break even a lot of the time. Like if you can turn a profit off ticket sales and sponsorship, if you go down that path, then that's amazing. So to actually have a big summit online that doesn't cost you that much, and people all over the world can register and attend. You're not just limited to the people, say, in Sydney or in Brisbane or in Barcelona.
You're right. That's where I'm at right now. But just to be clear though, like if you're starting from scratch, you're new to this, like yes, you can put together a summit for a few $100s, but if you want to invest in design, maybe Facebook ads, and maybe even have a team around you helping you with the summit, of course, you can generate more money. I mean, as an example, what we did with Chandler Bolt and the Self-Publishing Success Summit, that was, probably like a good 5-figure investment for him. But he also earned like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it was at the end, like $370,000. He grew his list with 30,000 people almost. And then he leveraged this summit to kind of get more partners on board, because it's very easy compared to, let's say, a product launch to get people on board to promote the summit, because in essence, it's free. People are promoting a free event. Maybe they are speaking on it, or if it's just a good fit, you can also get affiliates on board. And then if you do a good job making it super easy for them, very professional, they might be on board to promote one of your products later. And that's what happened to Chandler, because he had a flagship program already called Self-Publishing School, and he got more affiliates on board after his summit, and now he has like $1 million business. He grew his business super quickly after his summit, from he had 12,500 subscribers before, and afterwards he had I think 30-some thousand, and now he's closer to 100,000 with all the Facebook ads and promotions they've been running for their launches.
That's incredible. So when you're doing your first virtual summit, what are some of the things that you need to really focus on to make sure that it runs well?
Yeah, so the first thing you need to really make sure is that you define your profitable virtual summit theme. That's kind of the first step. So you make sure, okay, what do I want to focus on? What niche am I in? Who's my ideal customer avatar? So you go really specific and narrow down your focus with your summit. So it's not just, let's say you're in the marketing space and you do the marketing summit. It's going to be way too broad, unless you're in a very, maybe in a small country or something, you can do it for just that audience. But if you're doing it for, an online summit, I think it works better to niche down. Let's say if you're in the marketing space, you would do something like focus on one strategy or one, let's say later this year, I'm doing a list building summit, for example, to focus on helping people to grow their email list. And that's obviously part of kind of online marketing, but it's specific. And just as an example of one of my students, she's in the health and fitness space. And what she did is like a very crowded space. She was very skeptical to even doing a summit in the first place because she saw kind of all these people doing it and some people were successful already. And she was afraid, how can I break through? But then she went really specific and focused on one of her passions, which is kind of strength training, and did the women's strength, the women's strength summit. And now she's crushing it. She like built up a new audience for that with like 20,000 plus subscribers and, getting hundreds of sales because she really niched down. So that I would say is the first thing to figure out, how can you really make it specific so you can attract kind of your ideal audience. And that's going to be easier for you to also sell later when you create your products and services. If you don't have any of that yet, that's fine, but you need to make sure it's specific.
And then what comes next?
The next thing really after that, okay, so you figure this out. Okay, now you know what to do your summit on. It's the positioning and really making sure, okay, is there any other summits out there in my space? How can I make sure that my summit is better? That's what I'm always trying to do. You got to stand out, and you can do that, by having an amazing design, maybe inviting different speakers on for your summit, maybe having a different angle. So you make sure, if you have the kind of headline on your landing page, you got to make sure people, when they land on your page, they're going to feel really compelled to just sign up. And that's what we did for the Self-Publishing Success Summit too. If you, for example, go there, this like really specific that it's all about how to write, market, and publish your first book and use that book to take it to six figures. That was kind of our unique angle. And there were summits before in that space, but they had like more of the Kindle gurus on board, and we wanted to avoid that. So that was also how we separated ourselves and focused on people who use their book to build their business, and not just the gurus who makes like 50,000 a month on Amazon. That's how we kind of stood out in that space. And after that, it's all about planning the summit. That's kind of the third step. When you figure out the positioning of it, maybe you're getting into kind of designing your landing page. That's kind of the first page people land on when they're gonna sign up. And planning your summit is a lot that goes in there. So I don't know what do you want to focus on that? Well,
I think planning it, I think focusing on the most important things, like is it the speakers? Is it actually deciding the content or the topics that you're going to talk about? Or is it planning out like the promotion to get people registered? Oftentimes, like I like to look at what works really well and what doesn't. So yeah, which of the things I should focus on?
So let's go. Okay, so first you figure out, now you know what you're going to do your summit on. You figure out your name. And the name is not really that important. People like obsess over the name of their summit. It's not the most important thing. Let's just look at the Self-Publishing Success Summit. It's actually hard to spell, but it's clear and it is specific. And that's what matters most. Don't be really smart over your name. Unless you have a very strong brand name already, if people don't understand what it is, it's probably not a good name in the first place. And make sure the .com is available. That's the only thing there. The positioning and crafting a unique hook for your summit is far more important. And then when you go into kind of designing your page and all this, I would say if you're not like a skilled copywriter or anything like that, just model what works. You can see, maybe some of my summits I've done or other people are doing summits. Just look at what they are doing. When I did my first summit, the branding summit in late 2014, I didn't have any, experience doing a summit. I just looked what other people were doing at the time and like really tried to make it work. Of course, I spent a lot of time doing it, but that's kind of that's one way to do it. Just looking at the copy, trying to see, okay, what sections do they have? And that's important to get people to actually sign up from the page and having the right funnel in place. And of course, after you have at least the landing page created, then you can also look at your speaker list, which you should have created in the planning stage already. That's kind of when you have 50 to 100 people on a list, depending on how many you want on your summit. And you need to make sure they are a good fit. So just because they are the biggest name maybe in your industry doesn't mean they are the best fit for your summits. Yet I tend to kind of divide the speakers into A-listers. They're kind of the biggest names in your industry. We have the kind of B-listers. They have a good size audience, and they might be very likely actually to share your summit. And then we have C-listers, which are up and comers. Maybe they are on the same level as you, or maybe a few steps ahead. And they're also great to bring on board. So I like to have a good mix of people on my summit. So I build relationships. That's one of the biggest benefits by hosting a virtual summit in the first place. Not only that you will grow your list, that you will make some money. That's, to me, is that's a bonus, because you're building the relationship because you want to build a long-term business. So that's kind of what I focus on. Even before I start planning the summit, the relationships, like making sure, I'm on someone's radar. For example, I reached out to you early. I mean, you kind of knew about me, but you were on my list. And then I wanted to feature you in an expert roundup post for my summit. And that's a great way to build the relationships with influencers, like feature them on your site, linking to them, reaching out without like really expecting anything in return in the first place. And then when you have something coming up, they already know you. So let's say I reach out now for you being on my upcoming list building summit, it would be, more likely because you already know me. So that's kind of where I like to start with the speakers, like really building a relationship first. And then it's so much easier to get them on board, and not only get them on board, but actually maybe even getting them to share with their most valuable asset, which is their email list.
So that brings us to actually marketing the summit. Now, do you rely on guests reciprocating by sharing it to their audience, or do you come up with your own marketing plan independent of what the guests do? Talk us through that whole marketing planning stage that you go through.
Yeah. Obviously, if you have no audience, a lot will come from the speakers, and, maybe you have some other partners on board. So that's really important. I think that drives a lot of people to actually sign up. So I like to think about it as a 80-20 rule. So 80% of your opt-ins and sales will come from 20% of your promotional partners. So you have to, some of the speakers will really deliver and some might not. That's not a big deal. That's just how it is. And I do the same when I focus on my own promotional efforts. It's the 80-20 rule always. You don't have to do everything. That's the essence of it. You don't have to you could write guest posts. You can go on every podcast out there and do everything there is. But maybe for your first summit, you won't have time to develop this plan to maybe have a list of podcasts, have a list of, potential guest posts on bigger websites and, getting featured around the web. And what should you focus on if you have maybe very limited time? Then I would say it's the speakers and getting affiliates on board. That will really drive it for you. And if you have a budget, Facebook ads can be powerful, especially the retargeting for, getting sales for the All Access Pass and maybe getting people to sign up. So you retarget them. That's been working well for, not only the summit I did with Chandler, but also for some of my students that are using retargeting and they are doing really well. That I would say. And, getting speakers to share can be tricky sometimes, especially if they are very busy. Maybe they plan pretty much their promotional schedule in advance, but that's where the relationship comes into, and being really clear and making sure your summit stands out. It's got to be professional and you got to have great content. So if you are just starting out, I wouldn't even worry too much about I'm worried about if this speaker is going to share it or not. Focus on delivering epic content on your summit by, if you're doing the interviews, you're going to make sure you are, well read on their story, what's, really making it specific, not focusing on their story, for an interview that they can probably go on podcast and find their, story interview, whatever. Focus on, real content, real actionable content. So people who attend the summit, they can get some result. And if you do that, maybe if they don't share this interview with their audience, they're going to pretty much do their audience a disservice by not sharing it because it's so good. You focus on the right things. You covered exactly pretty much what they want to talk about as well, and making sure they sound good. And then you're making it easy for them to promote by having the swipe copy, by having promotional graphics. If you put their face, on an image, there's very few people who wouldn't share that, at least on social media. Maybe even take out some quotes from the interviews and putting that on images. You can use canva.com for that. That's very easy and expensive to create. But if you do that, you will see more results by speakers actually sharing their interviews and the summit with their audience as well. And that's how you get more people to sign up for your summit and obviously getting more sales and more exposure.
So in order to get a lot of those good quality speakers, whether they're A-listers, B-listers, or up-and-comers, it seems very apparent that there's a lot of relationship building that goes into it before they sort of know enough about you to say yes to a summit. And I noticed you're particularly good at building relationships. I mean, I was reading your 2015 annual review on your blog, and you connected with so many people in the industry. And what tips have you got, or what's worked particularly well with you for forming these relationships with so many people?
Yeah, so one way is to actually, as I do in my reports and the reviews I write, I link out to a lot of people and I let them know about it. I write about them in a very authentic way. I don't just mention them because I need to build a relationship with them, and they have actually impacted my life, my business in some way. And then I like to give back by featuring them on my blog. People who help me out in my business, whether it's for free or I pay them, I typically mention them in these reviews. So that's been working really well for giving credit where it's due. I like to do that always. And something else, these expert roundup posts, where we kind of feature a number of experts in the post, that's been working well too. So I did one actually in 2014. It was really popular, it went viral on personal branding. That was even before I considered doing a summit, but it was 37 experts shared their best personal branding tips for entrepreneurs or something like that. So I asked them a question, reached out, and it's very easy to kind of get a response from a lot of people. Maybe you have 50 to 60% response rate on that. So you have to reach out to, if you have 37, you might have to reach out to 60 or 70 people to get that number, but still it's a very low commitment for them. You link out to them, they are featured, and then you can get them to share very easily because they are in there. You can get them to tweet, you can get them to share on social media. So that's been a good way to build relationships. And one of my favorite ways is to actually be a case study for them, or in some way just let them know when I get the results. If I read a blog post from someone, I would take action. The same way if I purchase a course, that's also how I would, let them know about it. Just, without expecting anything in return, let them know via email. Just say, hey, I just read your blog post. I found it really valuable, and especially this, and I took action and achieved this specific result. That's been working well. And in particular, how build, a lot of people, they say, okay, how did you build a relationship with Ramit Sethi? It's not always that you have to build a relationship with this big expert. Now, we both promote Zero to Launch, and it's a great program, but I built a relationship with his team first, and that's how I got closer to Ramit, because eventually Ramit noticed me as well. I was getting a lot of sales for him, and then he invited me to launch in LA when I won his, number one affiliate for one of his launches. So that's kind of how it was. It was kind of a longer process where I kind of developed a relationship with his team, interviewed some of his students, and then eventually got to the point where I could meet up with Ramit and, pretty much as a peer. I don't even ask him too much about business at this point. I just like to hang out. It's just a regular person pretty much, that even though he has an 8-figure business, that's how I like to look at these influencers, that, that's how you become friends with them rather than putting them on a pedestal.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I've followed Ramit for a long time myself. And as you said, we both promote Zero to Launch, and Toby's gone through the program, my business partner. It's really cool to see people like that. And it's interesting that you say that it's taken quite a while getting to know his team, getting good results for yourself, as well as getting lots of sales for those more high-profile influencers and online personalities. So, mate, what hasn't worked so well? What's either failed, or what did you think was going to work really well but kind of flopped?
Hey, you mean with the virtual summits or relationship building?
Oh, actually, let's do both. Yeah, relationship building and virtual summits. I'd be keen to find out both.
That's a good question. in terms of relationship building, if you're not I've reached out to people before, just to, okay, maybe it was just a big name I wanted to interview just for the sake of interviewing that person. Sometimes doesn't just work because it doesn't feel authentic, and maybe they can feel it. Maybe you know their books and stuff like that, but you just, they have a book coming out and you just want to interview for that reason. that doesn't always work so well. What I like to do now is I really want to have them on. I really want to interview them. That's been working really well. So in the very beginning, when I reached out to Robert Greene, that's also like, he's sold millions of books, and I really admired him and I really read his books. And I think his team or him or whoever it was that responded to me, they could feel that it was an authentic approach, even though they could probably check out my podcast in 2014 and they knew, okay, he doesn't have a lot of people listening to his podcast, whatever. I just launched it, but he still said yes. And then that interview went on to actually, on YouTube, since I published it there as well, I get like 60,000 plus views. So it was not always a bad choice, but that came from the authentic standpoint that I really, really wanted to interview Robert Greene rather than just having someone on who is a big name for the sake of interview. That's the same for a virtual summit. You don't just get speakers on because someone else interviewed them, or maybe they're just a big name in your industry with a lot of followers. That won't always help you if they're not a perfect fit for what you want to do and for your target audience, because you got to grow a business after all. And that's how you do it, by developing the relationships in your space that you want to nurture moving forward as well.
I love that. So Navid, what final pieces of wisdom do you have to share with us, or what have you got on your chest that you'd like to get off your chest before we call it a day?
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to mention regarding the relationship building part that can really help you and really, make sure you stand out is reaching out. I think I shared this also. I was recently a speaker at Selena Su's Get Known, Get Clients event, and I shared this on stage, and a lot of people, they started talking about it in the break and so on. It was actually a very simple kind of tactic or strategy, is to do video invitations for your summit, or even you want to build relationships. Let's say you read someone's book and you want to build a relationship with that person. You can do a video testimonial or review of their book or something like that, and let them know about it. Publish it on Amazon, or if you're reaching out for a virtual summit, make sure it's like 1 to 2 minutes, very to the point, and tell the speaker exactly, okay, why do you want to have this person on? And that's a very authentic. People don't take the time to do that. That's the biggest reason why I love this strategy. I had a lot of students doing it with success, and and even if they say no, maybe they don't have time, that doesn't mean it's a no forever. People forget to follow up. That's also one thing I see a lot. That's a big mistake, actually, to not follow up when you don't hear back from someone because they are busy. I've missed emails before, and sometimes people only send one email. That's one of the biggest mistakes ever when it comes to building relationships, and also for a summit or anything you are doing. Let's say you want to feature people on your blog and you're reaching out to people. You have to follow up in order to get them to respond. If you maybe after the first week, you can follow up and then, have reminders. There's some tools for that too with Gmail, like Boomerang or Follow Up. So that's really, if you want to, put this on, your relationship building on, autopilot on steroids, really have a follow-up strategy and put systems in place for doing that.
Navid, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, how can listeners find out more about what you're up to?
For sure. If you are interested in virtual summits, the best way to find out more is to go to virtualsummitmastery.com/Adam. I think we can make that a URL for this episode, virtualsummitmastery.com/Adam, and you can get some more valuable content on how to create, promote, and profit from your own virtual summit so you can grow your business and brand rapidly. And I think you'll find that very valuable if you're interested, or at least a little bit interested about what the virtual summit can do for your business. And of course, my personal website, navidmoazzez.com. You can find out my blog there, some other stuff as well. So yeah, that's the best way to connect with me.
Cool. Navid, thank you. I'm hoping to run my first virtual summit in the coming year or so, and you are definitely my go-to guy for this. So I'll continue to study your work and participate in your virtual summits. And thank you for everything you've shared today. Have a lovely day.
Thanks so much.
And that's a wrap for my chat with Navid Moazzez. A couple of really cool things from that interview. The first is just how amazing those virtual summits can be. Putting thousands and thousands of subscribers onto your email list in a short period of time is very appealing. But of course, there is a whole lot of work that goes behind the scenes to set that up, to allow that to happen. And Navid does share his secrets in a free download that he's set up for you. You can head to virtualsummitmastery.com/Adam and you can access his blueprint for how to do it. The other thing I particularly liked about Navid's interview is his influencer outreach and how he takes a long-term approach and he doesn't expect anything in return and he does generous things. And if you listen to this podcast for a while, then that's exactly what I encourage you to do as well. Now, he's had some particular success and he spoke about reaching out to Ramit Sethi from the Zero to Launch program, which Toby is a graduate of. But he set out with him and became an affiliate, made lots of sales, gradually got on his radar and became friends and focused on the friendship side of things and the generosity side of things without being transactional and without expecting anything in return. It's great to see that that approach works and does lead to long-term friendships and partnerships. And in my opinion, that's what it's all about. Now, the intent with these podcasts is to deliver actionable advice, and I hope Navid and I did so on this occasion. If you enjoyed the show, we would love your feedback, whether it's public or private. If you want to leave some public feedback, head over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave us a review there. We'll give a shout out to people that leave 5-star reviews. And secondly, if you want to give private feedback, feel free to email me at adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au. Of course, this show was brought to you by our book, Web Marketing That Works. You can download the 33 marketing templates. Head to bluewiremedia.com.au/book, and they're all yours. And on that note, I think it's time to call it a day. So I look forward to speaking with you on the next show. Take care.